My name is Shannon Curtis. I'm 32 years old now, and for a long time, I believed that if I just worked harder, stayed quieter, and made myself useful enough, the people who were supposed to love me would finally see my value. I was wrong. The moment that finally broke me didn't happen in a screaming fight or some dramatic showdown. It happened in silence. One quiet Friday evening, I opened the drawer in my childhood bedroom and realized the money I had spent years saving was gone. Not misplaced, not lost, taken. And in that moment, standing alone in that room, staring at an empty tin box that had once held my future, something inside me shut off for good. I grew up in Cary, North Carolina, in a house that looked perfectly fine from the outside. White siding, neatly trimmed lawn, a driveway that always had my parents' SUV parked just right. The kind of house neighbors complimented. But inside, everything revolved around one person, my younger brother, Tucker. Tucker was 15 years old and already treated like he was destined for greatness. Basketball trophies lined the shelves in the living room. Team photos filled the hallway walls. His name was always being said with pride, with excitement, with possibility. Mine rarely was. My father, Kenneth, was a lawyer, always busy, always exhausted, always providing. He came home late most nights, loosened his tie, and collapsed onto the couch just in time to watch Tucker's game highlights on his phone. My mother, Cheryl, worked as an event planner. Weddings, birthday parties, corporate events. She poured every ounce of her energy into making other people's celebrations perfect. And Tucker's life was treated like the biggest event of all. Practices, games, travel tournaments, private trainers, new shoes. Tucker soaked it all in like it was his birthright. I learned early that my role in the family was different. I wasn't the star. I was the support system. While my parents focused on Tucker's future, I kept the present running. I took out the trash every Tuesday. I reminded my mother when bills were due. I made grocery lists. I cleaned the kitchen when no one else did. When something went wrong in the house, it was somehow my fault, or my responsibility to fix. And when I pointed that out, "Shannon, stop acting like the parent," my mom would say, rolling her eyes. But without me, the house would have fallen apart. They just never noticed. I started working at a small coffee shop in downtown Cary when I was 16. Minimum wage, early mornings, late nights, burned fingers from the espresso machine. Every tip, every paycheck went straight into a metal tin box I kept hidden under my bed. That money wasn't for fun. It was my exit plan. Community college, a cheap car, independence. I didn't tell my parents about it. I already knew what would happen if I did. They would either dismiss it or find a way to use it for Tucker. The favoritism wasn't subtle. When Tucker wanted $300 basketball sneakers, my mother drove him to the mall and paid without blinking. When I needed a laptop for school, I was told to figure it out. So I did. I bought a used one that froze every other hour. When Tucker needed rides to practice, the SUV was ready. When I needed a ride to my early shifts at the coffee shop, my dad told me to take the bus. The bus stop was a mile away. I walked it in the dark, backpack and apron slung over my shoulder, while Tucker got chauffeured like a VIP. At dinner, my accomplishments barely registered. If I mentioned an A on a test, my mom would smile politely and say, "That's nice, honey," before turning back to Tucker's stats. Once, I overheard my father talking to a colleague. "My son's got a real shot at a scholarship," he said proudly. "His sister? She's just there." That sentence stayed with me longer than he ever knew. By the time I turned 18, I had saved $1,500. Every dollar represented a skipped weekend, a missed hangout, a shift taken when I was exhausted. That money was freedom. I had plans. A used Honda, community college in the fall, a life where I wasn't invisible. And then came the night that took everything. I got home late after a double shift at the coffee shop. My clothes smelled like espresso and exhaustion. I was tired, but excited. The next morning, I was supposed to meet a guy selling a used car. I went to my room, slid the tin box out from under my bed, and opened it. It was empty. No cash, no explanation, just bare metal and silence. My hands shook as I searched my drawers, my closet, my backpack, already knowing the truth. Someone had taken it. I stormed downstairs and confronted my parents in the kitchen. My father was on his laptop. My mother was on the phone, laughing about a client's party. "Where is my money?" I demanded. They froze. And then my mother sighed like I was being dramatic. "We borrowed it," she said. Borrowed. For my brother's birthday party. The lavish one they had thrown the week before. DJ, catering, decorations, the works. Funded with my future. "It's just money," my father said, barely looking up. That was the moment something inside me finally snapped. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just realized something with terrifying clarity. If I stayed, this would never stop. So that night, lying in bed beside an empty tin box, I made a decision that would change everything. Not just for me, for them too. I sat up in bed the next morning like my body had already decided something my mind hadn't fully caught up with yet. The house was quiet. Too quiet in that specific way that only happens when a home is full of people who don't actually connect. No laughter, no warmth. Just the low hum of the AC and the faint thud of Tucker's basketball hitting the garage floor as he practiced alone. Because even at 15, he already moved through the world like it owed him applause. I stared at the empty tin box on my nightstand. It looked smaller than it used to, like my future had shrunk right along with it. And the strangest part was, I didn't feel panic. I felt clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop arguing with reality. Because it wasn't just that they'd taken my money. It was the way they'd taken it. Without a single word. Without a conversation. Without even the courtesy of feeling guilty. That's what hurt. Not the loss. The entitlement. The way my sacrifice was treated like it belonged to them. Like my life belonged to them. I pulled my blanket tighter and listened to Tucker's ball bounce again and again. And I realized something I'd never let myself admit before. If I stayed here, I would spend my entire life making myself smaller so other people could feel bigger. And I was done. I got dressed for school slowly, like every movement had weight. In the bathroom mirror, I looked older than 18. Not in my face. My face still looked like a teenager's. But in my eyes, they looked tired. The kind of tired women in their 30s have when they've spent 10 years being the reliable one, while everybody else gets to be the free one. That thought hit me hard because it felt like a warning from the future. Like my life was trying to show me where this road ended. And I didn't want that ending. Not for me. Not ever. Downstairs, my mom was at the kitchen counter, already on her laptop, calendar open, clicking through her event schedules. She had her busy woman energy turned on, the kind that made her feel important, the kind that made her feel justified. My dad was at the table with a cup of coffee, eyes on his phone. And Tucker? Tucker was eating cereal like nothing had happened, like he hadn't celebrated a party funded by my freedom. I stood there for a moment, gripping my backpack strap. No one looked up. No one asked if I was okay. No one said, "We need to talk," because, in their minds, they had already decided the issue was closed. So I decided something too. I walked out without saying a word. At school, the world moved the way it always did. The hallways smelled like deodorant, cafeteria pancakes, and teenage stress. Lockers slammed. Teachers yelled reminders. Girls in leggings and hoodies complained about homework like it was the worst thing that could happen to them. And I just drifted through it all. Like I was there, but not there. Like my body was walking while my mind ran calculations. I could feel the plan forming in the back of my brain, like a puzzle snapping into place. Where could I go? What did I need? How fast could I move? How much did I have left? How could I keep my college plans alive without a car? And then a cruel thought rose up like bile. You don't even have your own bank account. You were too scared to take up space. Because that was true. I'd never opened a real account because I'd never wanted my parents to notice. My entire life had been designed around not causing trouble, not demanding resources, not taking anything that wasn't offered. Like I didn't deserve to. I sat in the back of my history class, pretending to listen, while my mind replayed my mom's voice from last night. Don't be selfish, Shannon. Selfish. For wanting to keep the money I earned. Selfish. For wanting to leave. For wanting a life. I felt my throat tighten. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel sad. I felt angry, in a quiet, controlled way that scared me a little. Because I knew that anger could either destroy me or save me. At lunch, I sat with my two best friends, Grace and Jill. We'd been close since middle school. Grace was the kind of girl with warm eyes and steady hands, the kind of friend who always noticed when you were off, even if you insisted you were fine. Jill was sharper, quick-witted, blunt, the kind of girl who would tell you the truth, even if it stung, because she respected you enough not to lie. They were my real family, and I hadn't even fully realized it until that moment. Grace leaned toward me, brow furrowed. "Okay," she said slowly. "What's going on? You've been quiet all day." I stabbed a fork into my cafeteria salad like it had personally offended me. "My parents took my savings," I said. Jill's head snapped up. "Like, stole it?" I nodded. Grace's mouth fell open. "Shannon, what the... Why?" "For Tucker's birthday party," I said, and even saying it out loud made it sound unreal. Jill's face twisted with disgust. That's insane. It's worse, I said. They acted like it was normal, like I was being dramatic for caring. Grace reached across the table and took my hand. "Are you okay?" she asked quietly. That question, simple, genuine, hit me harder than anything my parents had said, because no one at home ever asked me that. My throat tightened again. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I know I can't stay there." Jill didn't hesitate. "Come to my place," she said immediately. Grace shook her head. "No, come to mine. My parents won't even blink. We have the guest room." Jill rolled her eyes. "Okay, yes, her house is nicer, but you can crash with either of us." I stared at them, shocked by how quickly they offered it. No conditions, no guilt, no lecture, just support. And something inside me softened, just a little, like my body was remembering what safety felt like. After lunch, I skipped the last 10 minutes of study hall and went straight to the guidance office. I didn't even think. I just moved, like my feet knew what my heart needed. Mrs. Marsh, the school counselor, looked up when I knocked. She was in her 40s, wore reading glasses on a chain, and had the kind of tired kindness that only comes from years of helping kids who had no one else. "Shannon?" she said, surprised. "Come in." I sat down and forced myself to speak before I chickened out. "I need help," I said. Her expression shifted instantly, gentle but alert. "Okay," she said. "Tell me what's happening." So I did. Not every detail, not all the years of being invisible, but enough. The money, the car, the community college plan, the way my parents didn't care. And then I said the words that felt like stepping off a cliff. "I think I need to move out." Mrs. Marsh didn't gasp. She didn't judge. She didn't say, "But they're your parents." She just nodded slowly, like she'd been waiting for me to say it. "Do you have somewhere safe to go?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "My friend Grace said I can stay with her." "Good," she said. "That's step one." Then she turned to her computer, pulled up my file, and started talking in a calm, practical voice that made my panic shrink. "We're going to make sure your education stays on track," she said. "Community college is absolutely possible. There are need-based scholarships and grants you may qualify for, especially if your financial situation changes." My heart pounded. "Even if my parents won't help?" I asked. She looked at me over her glasses. "Especially if your parents won't help," she said. And something in me almost broke, not from sadness, but relief. Because for the first time, an adult was treating my life like it mattered. After school, I went to work. The coffee shop felt like an entirely different universe from my house. Here, if you worked hard, people noticed. Here, if you showed up, you mattered. I tied my apron on, washed my hands, and started steaming milk. The rush hit around 4, orders flying, milk frothing, espresso shots pulling. And my brain loved it because it was simple. Do the job, get paid. No emotional games, no favoritism, no invisible role. Just work. Halfway through the shift, my manager Craig Hunter caught my eye from behind the counter. Craig was in his late 20s, laid back, always wearing a baseball cap, but he ran the place with quiet competence. "Shannon," he said, leaning closer. "You good? You look intense today." I swallowed. This was risky, but I needed to ask. Craig, I said carefully, when I graduate, could I get more hours? He didn't hesitate. You want full-time? He asked. My chest tightened. Yes, I said, if possible. Craig nodded like it was obvious. You're one of my best workers, he said. You show up, you're fast, you don't complain. Of course you can get more hours. My stomach flipped. Thank you, I said, and my voice came out smaller than I meant it to. Craig tilted his head. Everything okay at home? He asked. I almost lied. My reflex was always to lie. But something about the way he asked, casual, no pressure, made the truth feel possible. My parents aren't great, I said softly. Craig's expression hardened just a fraction, like he understood more than I was saying. Well, he said, you keep doing what you're doing. You're gonna be okay. And if you ever need someone to vouch for your work ethic or help you with anything practical, you let me know. I nodded, throat tight again, because I was realizing something terrifying. Strangers and coworkers were treating me with more respect than my own family. That night, I didn't go home right away. I walked to a small diner near downtown Cary, the kind with vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like burnt comfort. My grandfather, Earl, liked it there. He was my mom's dad, and he'd been the only adult in my family who ever looked at me like I was my own person. He wasn't warm in a sentimental way. He was warm in a steady way, like an oak tree. He was already seated when I arrived, newspaper folded beside his plate, hands wrapped around a mug. Shannon, he said, eyes narrowing. You look like you haven't slept. I slid into the booth across from him. I need to tell you something, I said. He didn't interrupt, so I told him. All of it this time. The money, the party, the way my parents shrugged like my life was disposable, the way Tucker acted like it was funny. And when I said, I think I'm leaving, my voice finally cracked. Not into tears, just cracked, like a dam shifting. My grandfather stared at me for a long moment. Then he leaned back, sighed through his nose, and said something I didn't expect. I wondered how long it would take. I blinked. What? He shook his head slowly. They've been leaning on you for years, he said. Not because you owe them, because you're the easiest one to lean on. You don't push back. The words hit like a slap. Not because they were cruel, because they were true. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. I stared at it like it might bite. What is this? I asked. Open it, he said. My fingers trembled as I opened the flap. Inside was a printed bank statement. I stared at the number and felt my brain go blank. $10,000. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. What is this? I whispered. I've been setting it aside for you, he said simply. For school, rent, whatever you need to start your life. I didn't tell your mother, because she would have used it on your brother. I couldn't breathe. $10,000. It wasn't just money. It was proof. Proof that someone saw me. Proof that someone believed my future mattered enough to protect. My eyes blurred. I hated crying. I hated needing. But the tears came anyway, sliding silently down my face. My grandfather's voice softened just a fraction. Don't cry, he said. Use it. Build something. And don't let them guilt you into staying small. I wiped my face quickly, embarrassed. I don't want to take this from you, I said. He gave me a look that shut that down immediately. "You're not taking it," he said. "You're receiving it. There's a difference." Then he leaned forward, eyes sharp. "And Shannon," he said, "if you leave clean. You don't threaten, you don't scream, you don't beg. You move like you already know you're gone." My stomach flipped. "How?" I whispered. My grandfather took a slow sip of coffee. "You make a plan," he said. "Then you execute." When I got home that night, the house was loud. My parents were arguing, something about Tucker forgetting homework, something about a tournament schedule, something about who was picking him up. None of it had anything to do with me. None of them even noticed I walked in. I stood in the doorway for a moment, listening, watching them spin around Tucker's life like planets around the sun. And I felt something calm settle into my chest. A decision. I walked upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and started making a list. Not in my head, on paper. Because lists were what I did. Lists were how I survived. 1. Safe place to stay, Grace's house. 2. School, Mrs. Marsh plus scholarships. 3. Income, full-time hours at coffee shop after graduation. 4. Money safety, open a bank account in my name only. 5. Emergency fund, Grandpa's $10,000. 6. Exit time, when parents are out with Tucker. I stared at the page. My heart pounded. But underneath the fear was something else. Power. Because for the first time, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. The next day at school, I went straight to the bank during lunch. It was a small branch near downtown, bright fluorescent lights and cheerful posters about saving. I felt stupid walking in, like an imposter, but the teller smiled. "Hi, how can I help you?" she asked. "I need to open an account," I said. She didn't ask why. She didn't ask where my parents were. She just handed me forms and spoke in a calm tone that made me feel like an adult. When she asked if anyone else would be on the account, my mouth went dry. "No," I said, "just me." And when I signed my name on those papers, something in my chest loosened, like I had claimed a piece of myself back. That afternoon, I went to Grace's house after school. Her mom greeted me at the door like she'd been expecting me, not with suspicion, with kindness. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, pulling me into a hug so gentle it made my throat tighten all over again. "Grace told me, you can stay as long as you need." Grace's dad offered a small nod from the couch, like he didn't want to overwhelm me, but he wanted me to know he was there. It was normal. It was safe. It was what a home was supposed to feel like. Grace led me upstairs to the guest room. Clean bed, soft blanket, a lamp on the nightstand. And when she closed the door, she turned to me. "Okay," she said. "When are you leaving?" I swallowed. "Saturday," I said. "Why Saturday?" she asked. "My parents take Tucker to tournaments on Saturdays," I said. "They'll be gone most of the day." Grace nodded. "Then Saturday it is," she said, like she was talking about a study session. And that's when I realized something else. To Grace, me escaping wasn't dramatic. It was necessary. Friday night, my mom knocked on my bedroom door. I froze. "Shannon?" she called. "Dinner!" I stared at the door, heart pounding. This was the part I hated, the pretending, the forced normal. I went downstairs and sat at the table. Tucker talked about his upcoming tournament, bragging about how his coach said he might get scouted. My dad nodded, half listening. My mom asked Tucker if he'd packed his extra socks. No one asked about my day. No one mentioned my money, no apology, no shame. Halfway through the meal, my dad looked at me like he just remembered I existed. "Don't forget," he said, "you're picking up Tucker's uniform from the laundry tomorrow before we leave." I stared at him. A year ago, I would have said yes. A month ago, I would have said yes, but something inside me had changed. "I'm not doing that," I said calmly. Silence dropped over the table. My mom's eyes narrowed. "What did you just say?" she asked. "I said I'm not doing that," I repeated. "You can handle your son's laundry." My mom's face hardened. "Shannon," she snapped, "don't start." And there it was. Don't start, meaning don't disrupt the family system where your role is to make everything easier for everyone else. I felt my heart pounding, but my voice stayed steady. "I'm not starting," I said. "I'm stopping." My dad scoffed. "Oh my God, are we still on this money thing?" Still, like it was an inconvenience, like it was a tantrum I was dragging out. My hands clenched under the table. Tucker smirked. "You're so dramatic," he muttered. And in that moment, I knew Saturday wasn't just a plan. It was a necessity. Because if I stayed, they would grind my spirit down until I didn't even recognize myself. Saturday morning, my parents left early. My mom yelled reminders while rushing out the door. "Tucker, your water bottle! Kenneth, the cooler!" My dad grabbed his keys. Tucker grabbed his basketball. And no one looked at me. It was almost funny how invisible I was until I wasn't useful. The door shut. The house fell silent. And I moved. Fast. Not frantic. Focused. I packed clothes, school supplies, my laptop, my journal, a couple of framed photos that actually mattered. I left behind everything else, because I was done carrying things I didn't need. When my duffel bags were ready, I sat at my desk and stared at a blank piece of paper. This was the moment where some girls would write a long letter, explaining, pleading, justifying. I didn't want that. I wanted clarity. So I wrote one short paragraph. Not angry, not emotional, just true. Then I folded it neatly and placed it on the kitchen counter where my mom couldn't miss it. I hauled my bags outside, walked to the bus stop, and waited. The bus arrived. I climbed on. I didn't look back. And as the house disappeared behind me, my chest filled with a strange mix of fear and freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't being carried by my family. I was carrying myself. My phone started buzzing before I even reached Grace's neighborhood. Text after text after text, from my mom, from my dad, then calls, then voicemails. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. For a second, my fingers hovered over the answer button. Old instincts. Be good, be polite, explain, fix it. Then I remembered the empty tin box and my grandfather's voice. Leave clean. So I turned my phone off, not out of cruelty, out of survival. By the time I got to Grace's house, my hands were shaking. Grace met me at the door and pulled me inside. "You did it," she whispered. I nodded, breath shaky. "I did it," I said back. And then, finally, my body released. I sat on the couch and let myself cry for about 30 seconds. Not because I missed them, because my nervous system was finally realizing I didn't have to be on alert every second anymore. Grace sat beside me, rubbing my back. "You're safe," she said, and I believed her. That night, Aunt Donna called. I almost didn't answer, but Aunt Donna wasn't like my mom. She was my mom's sister, warmer, quieter, the one who always looked uncomfortable when my parents praised Tucker too loudly. I picked up, heart pounding. "Shannon," she said, voice low. "Are you okay?" "I'm safe," I said quickly. "I'm at Grace's." She exhaled, relieved. "Your mom is losing her mind," she said. I didn't respond. I just listened. "They found your note," she continued. "Your dad is furious. Your mom is screaming. And Tucker," she hesitated. "What?" I asked. Aunt Donna's voice tightened. "He shrugged," she said. "He literally shrugged and said, 'She's being dramatic.'" My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Aunt Donna sighed. "They're fighting, Shannon," she said. "Like, really fighting. They're blaming each other, and the house is already messy. Like no one knows what to do." I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. It was happening. The thing I'd always known but never wanted to test. Without me, their little world didn't function. Aunt Donna's voice softened. "I'm not calling to guilt you," she said quickly. I wanted you to know you're not crazy. You're not wrong for leaving." My eyes burned again. "Thank you," I whispered. And when I hung up, I lay on Grace's guest bed staring at the ceiling. My phone remained off, because the girl who used to fix everything was gone. By the end of that week, the messages from my parents shifted. They started angry, then demanding, then pleading. "Where are you? Come home right now. You can't do this. Shannon, please just tell us you're safe." And reading those words, I felt something cold in my chest. Not guilt, not love, just the ugly realization that they didn't miss me. They missed what I did for them. They missed their unpaid assistant, their house manager, their emotional sponge. And now that role was empty. So they were panicking. On Friday evening, Mrs. Marsh called me into her office again. "I updated your contact address," she said, handing me papers, "and I have scholarship forms for you. I also want you to know, if things at home get unsafe or they try to force you back, we can document everything." Document. That word made me sit up straighter, because suddenly the situation wasn't just emotional. It was real. It had consequences. And the adult world had systems. Systems my parents couldn't override with guilt. I walked out of her office with a folder in my hands and a new thought in my mind. I wasn't powerless. I'd just never been taught that I had power. That weekend, Craig adjusted my schedule. He slid the new hours across the counter. "You sure you can handle this?" he asked. "I need it," I said. Craig nodded, no pity in his eyes. "Then you've got it," he said. And that was it. No guilt, no lecture, just respect. A few days later, my grandfather called. "Did you move?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Good," he replied. Then, after a pause, "Now you stay gone." My throat tightened. "I will," I said. And in that moment, I meant it. Because this wasn't just me running away. This was me running toward something. A life where I wasn't invisible. A life where my effort wasn't treated like family property. A life where I could finally breathe. But here's the part I didn't expect. The second I left, everything at home started falling apart faster than anyone could have imagined. And when Aunt Donna told me what happened next, I realized my parents weren't just losing control of me. They were losing control of everything. The first sign that things were truly unraveling came in the form of a phone call I didn't answer. It was from my father. He'd left 3 voicemails already that week, each one more strained than the last. At first, his messages were sharp and clipped, commands disguised as concern. "Shannon, this has gone far enough. Come home." Then they softened. "We can talk this out." And finally, desperation crept in. "Please call me back." That last one sat in my voicemail inbox like a weight on my chest. Because it wasn't love I heard in his voice. It was panic. Aunt Donna was the one who filled in the gaps. She called on a Wednesday night while I was sitting on the floor of Grace's guest room, textbooks spread around me, trying to focus on an assignment while my brain refused to settle. "Do you have a minute?" she asked carefully. "Yeah," I said. "What's going on?" She exhaled slowly. "Your house is chaos," she said. "And I don't mean emotionally. I mean practically." I closed my eyes. She didn't sugarcoat it. Bills were overdue. The electricity notice, bright red letters, was taped to the fridge. The kitchen sink was overflowing with dirty dishes because no one remembered to run the dishwasher. The trash hadn't gone out in weeks. The fridge was nearly empty except for expired milk and condiments. "All the things you used to handle?" Aunt Donna said gently. "No one's doing them." I pictured it instantly. The Post-it notes I used to stick on the fridge. The reminders I'd whispered to my mom. The quiet way I kept everything moving so no one else had to think. Gone. And without me, everything stalled. My father's professional life started to crack first. Kenneth Curtis had built his entire identity around being competent, respected, reliable. But that image relied on one thing he'd never acknowledged. Someone else was holding his personal life together so he could focus on work. Now that person was gone. According to Aunt Donna, he missed an important client meeting, one he'd scheduled months in advance. Not because he forgot the time, because he forgot to prepare. He walked into the office distracted, unorganized, and uncharacteristically flustered. His longtime business partner, Vincent, pulled him aside afterward. "Get it together," Vincent told him, voice low but firm. "You're slipping." My father laughed it off, of course, blamed stress, blamed family issues. But the damage was done. Clients noticed. Deadlines slipped. Emails went unanswered. And once doubt creeps into a profession built on trust, it spreads fast. Within 2 weeks, a major client quietly moved their case to another firm. My father didn't tell anyone at home, but Vincent told Aunt Donna, and Aunt Donna told me. My mother didn't fare any better. Cheryl had always thrived on control, on schedules, on looking put together. But without me buffering the chaos, everything hit her at once. Tucker forgot his gear, forgot assignments, forgot appointments. And for the first time, my mother had to deal with the consequences directly. She snapped at him constantly, yelled about messes she'd never noticed before, complained that no one helped her anymore. The irony didn't escape me. For years, she'd told me to stop acting like the parent. Now she was furious that no one was. Her event planning business began to suffer. She missed calls, canceled meetings, forgot deadlines. Clients noticed the shift, and in Carrie's tight-knit community, reputation mattered. Once word spread that Cheryl was unreliable, the bookings slowed, then stopped. The woman who once prided herself on making everyone else's celebrations perfect could barely manage her own household. And Tucker? Tucker unraveled the fastest. Without me quietly handling the background of his life, the spotlight got harsh. He showed up late to practice twice in 1 week, forgot his uniform, talked back to his coach, argued over a foul call during a game, and refused to sit when benched. The coach suspended him for the next 2 games. Tucker had never been told no in a way that stuck. He exploded, yelled at my mom, blamed my dad, slamming doors, throwing things. And when my parents tried to discipline him, really tried for the first time, they realized something terrifying. They had no leverage. They had spent years building his ego and almost no discipline. The golden child had no structure, and without structure, he fell apart. The night Aunt Donna told me all this, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, like the universe was simply balancing itself. Because here's the truth I'd been afraid to admit. I wasn't the problem. I was the glue. And when you remove glue from a broken structure, everything collapses. That didn't make me cruel. It made me necessary. And I had chosen to stop being necessary for people who didn't appreciate it. Meanwhile, my life was transforming in quieter, more meaningful ways. I moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment with Jill near downtown Cary. The floors creaked. The walls were thin, but it was ours. Rent was split evenly. Bills were paid on time, and for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where my money was going. I opened my banking app more times than I could count, just to reassure myself the balance was real. Mine. Untouchable. Community college started in the fall. I enrolled in communications courses because something about storytelling had always pulled at me. Maybe because my own story had never been heard. Classes were harder than high school, more demanding, but also more respectful. Professors spoke to me like I was capable, like my thoughts mattered, and that alone changed how I showed up. I worked full-time at the coffee shop now, early mornings, long shifts, sore feet, but every paycheck felt different. Because I wasn't handing it over to anyone else's dreams, I was building my own. Craig noticed the change in me almost immediately. "You're different," he said one afternoon while we prepped for a rush. "Better tired," I joked. He smiled. "Whatever it is," he said, "you're solid. You've got leadership written all over you." No one had ever said that to me before. Not my parents, not my teachers. Leadership. The words sat with me long after the shift ended. The biggest shift came when I joined the college photography club on a whim. I almost didn't. I told myself I was too busy, too practical. But something inside me whispered, "Try." So I did. And for the first time, I found something that felt like mine in a way nothing else ever had. I borrowed a second-hand camera, walked around Cary's parks, photographed quiet moments, sunlight on water, leaves in motion, reflections in windows. It wasn't about being impressive. It was about noticing, about finally seeing the world from my own perspective. The club members gave feedback, encouraged me, challenged me, and slowly, something shifted in my chest. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was expanding. 3 months after I left, my parents called together. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to hear them out, once. "Shannon," my mother said, voice tight, "we want you to come home." My father cleared his throat. "We'll make things right." I closed my eyes. "Tell me how," I said calmly. Silence. Then my mother said, "We just need you." And there it was. Not an apology, not accountability. Need. I exhaled slowly. "I can't come back," I said. "I'm building my life." "You're tearing this family apart," my father snapped. "No," I said evenly. I stopped holding it together by myself. The line went quiet. Then my mother started crying. "I raised you better than this," she said. I almost laughed, but instead, I said something I'd practiced in my head 100 times. "You raised me to take responsibility," I said. "I'm finally doing that, for myself." And then I hung up. The fallout intensified after that. Vincent called me directly one afternoon. I almost didn't answer, confused by the unknown number. "Shannon," he said, voice tired. "This is Vincent, your father's partner." My stomach tightened. "I'm not calling to drag you back," he continued. "I'm calling because your father is on thin ice. One more mistake, and he's out." I swallowed. "I'm sorry," I said, because it was the polite thing to say. Vincent sighed. "He built his life assuming someone else would always cover the cracks," he said. "That's not your responsibility." Hearing it from him, someone outside the family, sealed something in me. Even strangers could see the truth. Aunt Donna kept me updated. The fights at home escalated. My parents blamed each other constantly. Years of resentment surfaced. My mother accused my father of emotionally abandoning the family. My father accused my mother of spoiling Tucker beyond repair. Tucker shut himself in his room, stopped practicing, stopped caring. The kid who once strutted through life like it was a highlight reel now barely left the house. Then came the call that changed everything. Tucker had been kicked off the team, not suspended, removed, for repeated behavioral issues. My mother sobbed into the phone. "This was his future," she cried. I felt something twist in my chest. Not joy, not revenge, just a sad clarity. His future had never been guaranteed. It had been propped up by denial. On my 19th birthday, I didn't throw a party. I didn't want one. Instead, Grace, Jill, my grandfather, and Aunt Donna met me at a small park in Cary. Cupcakes, cheap candles, laughter. My grandfather hugged me and whispered, "You look stronger." And I was. Not because I'd won, but because I'd chosen myself. That night, lying in my apartment, I thought about the girl I'd been. The one who believed love was earned through sacrifice. The one who confused being useful with being valued. She didn't exist anymore. I didn't go back home, not for holidays, not for guilt, not for apologies that never came. I built boundaries like walls and windows, strong but intentional. And slowly, my parents learned something they never expected. Life without me was harder, not because I was dramatic, but because I was essential, and I had finally taken that power with me. The final shift didn't happen all at once. It happened quietly, the way real change always does. 6 months after I left, my father lost his job. Not dramatically, no courtroom scandal, no public firing. Just a closed-door meeting and a severance package that felt heavier than it should have. Vincent called me afterward, not because he had to, but because he wanted me to understand something. "Your dad isn't a bad man," he said, "but he built his life assuming stability would just exist." I understood exactly what he meant. My father had mistaken reliability for permanence. He thought things held together on their own. He never stopped to ask who was doing the holding. My mother's collapse came slower, but deeper. Her event planning business never recovered. Too many missed calls, too many canceled meetings, too many whispers. In Cary, people don't forget unreliability. They don't announce it either. They just stop calling. By winter, Cheryl stopped working altogether. She spent her days pacing the house, reorganizing drawers that didn't need reorganizing, snapping at Tucker over things that had never mattered before. The house felt hollow. And for the first time in her life, she had nothing to distract her from that feeling. Tucker's downfall was the most painful and the most inevitable. Without basketball, he didn't know who he was. The friends who once orbited him drifted away. The coaches who once praised him stopped responding. The spotlight disappeared. And underneath it all was a kid who'd never learned resilience. He bounced between excuses and anger, blamed coaches, blamed teachers, blamed my parents, blamed me. At one point, my mother sent me a message that read, "If you hadn't left, this wouldn't have happened." I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I deleted it. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. My leaving didn't break them. It revealed them. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. Not during a holiday, not during a crisis. Just a phone call on a quiet Tuesday evening. My mother asked if we could meet. Just us. "No yelling," she said. "I promise." I agreed. Not because I owed her, but because I no longer feared her. We met at a small cafe halfway between my apartment and my childhood home. She looked older, tired. Her hair was pulled back too tightly, like she was still trying to hold something together. She didn't waste time. "I didn't realize how much you did," she said. Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I was wrong." Just that. I took a sip of my coffee and let the silence stretch. "Why now?" I asked. She swallowed. "Because everything fell apart when you left," she admitted. "And I didn't understand why." I looked at her calmly. "That's the problem," I said. "You never tried to." Her eyes filled with tears. "I needed you," she whispered. I nodded. "I know," I said. "But you never needed me. You needed what I provided." That landed hard. She tried to argue, tried to explain, tried to justify. And for the first time in my life, I didn't absorb it. I didn't defend myself. I didn't shrink. I just stated the truth. "I won't come back," I said. "Not to live, not to manage, not to fix." She nodded slowly. "I figured," she said. There was grief in her voice, but also acceptance. And that was enough. I never had a dramatic reunion, no apology tour, no emotional hug that healed everything. What I got was better. Distance, boundaries, peace. A year later, I transferred to a 4-year university, communications major, photography minor. I worked part-time and freelanced on the side, selling prints and doing small shoots. My work wasn't flashy, but it was honest, and people responded to that. Craig wrote me a recommendation that made me cry. My grandfather attended my first gallery showing and stood in the corner like the proudest man alive. Grace and Jill were still my family, chosen, steady, real. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't exhausted from proving my worth. My parents and I speak now, occasionally, briefly, without expectations. They learned, slowly, that access to me is a privilege, not a right. Tucker eventually found his footing in something quieter, less glamorous, more grounded. I wish him well, from a distance. Looking back, I understand something I didn't then. Women like me don't burn out because we're weak. We burn out because we're strong, and people take advantage of that strength until there's nothing left. Leaving didn't make me selfish. It made me honest. And honesty changes everything. If you're listening to this and you feel tired in a way sleep won't fix, if you're the one holding everyone else together while disappearing in the process, hear this clearly. You are allowed to choose yourself. You are allowed to leave systems that survive only because you're sacrificing yourself for them. And when you do, you don't destroy families. You give everyone, including yourself, a chance to finally grow up. That was the beginning of my real life, and I've never looked back.